activists are full of it. Act like they compassionate, but that's a bunch of Bolshevik.
That's a bunch of Bolshevik. Very, very good line. You thought he was going to say something else and he came up with Bolshevik. This is a well-read gentleman. He knows his history. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Old Men in Chairs. The gentleman on your screen, Flawdzilla, is best known as a YouTube reactor. I have watched some of his reactions. He did mention that he was also a rapper, but this is actually the first time that I've ever seen any of his work. I'm not a huge follower of him, mainly because he tends to do a lot of live reactions that are quite lengthy. I don't generally watch those longer live feeds that are an hour or more to react to one song. I do watch a lot of reactors, and this morning I happen to be watching a fellow from Las Vegas who has a channel called The LVME. He was reacting to this new song that Flawdzilla just dropped yesterday called Marxism. So I started watching it, and wow, this guy should give up his reaction career and keep doing stuff like this, because this is absolutely amazing. Very timely subject right in the middle of an election, and if you know me at all, I'm looking for timely material. So let's get this started, and I'll have a lot to say about this one.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
In case you don't recognize that voice, that's the famous President Ronald Reagan. I realize if you're under 30 years of age, it's something that happened before you were alive. It's like me talking about FDR. I've always loved that quote. I know a lot of liberals. I live in a college town. And they're quite certain in their beliefs. The problem is a lot of things they believe are just not so.
Ain't nobody trailblazing. Rap game is in a stale placing. Sales looking like snails racing. All the males ain't men. Hold their fingers up to hail Satan. Bet them niggas got their nails painted.
I 100% agree with the first part of that when he said that the rap game is in a slow period right now. I struggle to find good material to react to. I'm not seeing a lot out there, with a few notable exceptions. You know, Tom McDonald and High Res and a few others are doing a good job. I partly blame YouTube censorship for some of that, because when a person does a song like this one, they get shadow banned. They don't produce very good numbers, and I don't think it's a natural problem. I think it's a problem being enforced from the top down on them. So I believe a lot of artists, unfortunately, have shied away from talking about anything controversial or anything political. Therefore, their music has become less relevant, at least to me. This one here is bucking the trend.
Ain't nobody trailblazing. Rap game is in a stale placing. Sales looking like snails racing. All the males ain't men. Hold their fingers up to hail Satan. Bet them niggas got their nails painted. It's an agenda. Everybody thinking they could change their gender. I could join the WNBA and play center. Just identify as a they, them. And if it makes sense, then they censor. It's a brain bender. Internet feel like a hive mind. We need protection from text, speech, a high crime. Reject the TOS and be arrested. See, the best thing you could do is respect the fucking guidelines.
Man, he's really going after it right here. He said a mouthful. If you disagree, they censor. That's the problem in a nutshell right there. And the terms of service, well, they make them up as they go along, but you can violate the, quote, community guidelines or be accused of disinformation, misinformation, malinformation, basically anything they don't agree with.
Reject the TOS and be arrested. See, the best thing you could do is respect the fucking guidelines. Pro-establishment, these activists are full of it. Act like they compassionate, but that's a bunch of Bolshevik.
That's a bunch of Bolshevik. Very, very good line there. And for those who are not familiar with their history, the Bolsheviks were the left-wing faction of the Revolutionary Army in pre-Soviet Russia. They broke away from what they called the Mensheviks, who were the ones that wanted to go at a little slower pace. And of course, Lenin was the main Bolshevik, and they eventually did take over the country in the October Revolution of 1917, and Lenin was the first leader of Russia who was known for violence in wiping out all opposition. You thought he was going to say something else, and he came up with Bolshevik. This is a well-read gentleman. He knows his history.
See, the best thing you could do is respect the fucking guidelines. Pro-establishment, these activists are full of it. Act like they compassionate, but that's a bunch of Bolshevik. Fascists are in fashion, see they capping from the look of it. Leninists are really menaces, there ain't no benefits to Marxism. I don't even feel like rhyming, it's Marxism. If you seeking, then you'll find out it's Marxism. I'll repeat it one more time, that is Marxism. For the people left behind, Marxism. They ain't even trying to hide it, it's Marxism. You don't see it, then you blind, cause it's Marxism. Maybe read between the lines, this is Marxism. Imagine being on their side.
They don't try to hide it anymore. Kamala's father was an outright Marxist economic professor at Berkeley. She was raised as a Marxist. Her policies are Marxist. They always try to put a soft face on communism and call it socialism. Socialism is just how they get their foot in the door, and then once they have power, then they go to full-fledged Marxism and communism, which used to be an economic philosophy. Karl Marx, who wrote the original book about critique of capitalism and wanted the workers of the world to unite in communism, had mainly an economic theory that the so-called proletariat, the poor people, were being dominated by the rich capitalist people, and he wanted them to seize power. In more recent times, they figured out that the workers didn't really want to unite because they saw the benefit that capitalism was bringing many of their poor people who were no longer poor, who had come through the system and ended up having more of a middle-class life or even better. So then they came up with an alternative plan, which is called cultural Marxism. And that's what he's talking about a lot in this song. Cultural Marxism is a way to create the conditions where actual Marxism can come to power. And if you can't divide people by economic class, which turned out to be a failure, find another way to divide them by race or by gender or by sexual preference. So-called grievance groups. Appeal to them and tell the black people that, oh, you'll never get ahead because you're black. Or the women, you'll never get ahead because you're a woman. Or the gay people, you'll never get anywhere because you're gay. Nurture those grievances. He's going to get into this a little bit more. Communism has never worked anywhere in the world as a successful economic system. But you can vote yourself into communism, but you have to shoot your way out. Because once they gain power, they do quite well. The people at the top do quite well under communism, but the people that supposedly were going to be helped, you know, the workers of the world, they're still left in poverty. Every time it's been tried, they're either killed because they don't go along with the program, or they're in crushing poverty with no freedoms. And that's been proven every time that communism has been tried. It's been a failure. And yet, they're always saying, oh, well, let's give it one more try. They just didn't do it right the last time. But this time we'll do it. It'll be different. This time we'll do it right. Yeah.
This is Marxism. Imagine being on their side. People united will never be defeated. Evilish tyrants forever will be scheming. We wasting time with the petty disagreements. Devil and his demons are pledging the allegiance. Why you think that they attacking masculinity and silencing men time and time and again? I won't pretend that we ain't kinda intense, but violence in men's the only line of defense. The smartest way to bring a nation to its knees. Take who keep it safe, emasculate them till they weak. Shame us for our nature and berate us when we speak. Ask her how a day, now you a rapist and a creep.
Exactly. This is what he's talking about. Cultural Marxism that tells women that all men are rapists and that all men should be denigrated. And this is how you divide and conquer a country, as he's going to explain here a little more. It's cultural Marxism, putting one against the other, as he called it, petty disagreements. Get them fighting, you know, men versus women, black versus white, whatever it is, straight versus gay. Get people fighting among themselves, and then you can divide and conquer and nurture those grievances. I love the little chessboard with the black and the white giant chess pieces. I don't know where that is, but that's a cool place to shoot a video.
Ask her how a day, now you a rapist and a creep. Tell a woman she don't need to seek a husband. Why she reproducing when she could just be productive? Freeze your eggs, go and be a breadwinner. The bun ain't even cooked, so it's cool to clean the oven. Female empowerment is titties on the gram. Posting your pics for a pitiful lonely man that wasn't creeping to that subscription to OnlyFans. Feminists are really menaces, there ain't no benefits to Marx.
So then he goes after the feminists there's no benefit to the feminists. They're selling this ideology to young girls, younger and younger. They start them off very young in grade school now. And they tell them, oh, you can be powerful, honey. You just don't need a man. The famous feminist saying was that a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. That was back 50 years ago more. That was what they were telling women. You don't need a man, you don't need a family, you don't need children. And what's the end result of all that? You have an atomized society like we're starting to develop, or already have developed here in this country, where everyone's divided among themselves, and that leaves a power vacuum that the communists can ride to power on. The family is the bulwark of freedom. They need to destroy the American family so they can take over and have power. If you look at the agenda of people backing Kamala, you'll see these are feminists who don't believe in reproducing as God told us to multiply and replenish the earth. God is another big obstacle to Marxism. Marx famously said that religion is the opiate of the masses. He wanted to destroy religion as well as the family to create the perfect playing field so Marxism could take over. Let's point out also that this is a good rap song and a good beat. I love the little bass too. The bass is killer on this.
Feminists are really menaces, there ain't no benefits to Marxism. I don't even feel like rhyming, it's Marxism. If you seeking, then you'll find out it's Marxism. I'll repeat it one more time, that is Marxism. For the people left behind, Marxism. They ain't even trying to hide it, it's Marxism. You don't see it, then you blind, cause it's Marxism. Maybe read between the lines, this is Marxism. Imagine being on their side. People united will never be defeated. Evilish tyrants forever will be scheming. We wasting time with the petty disagreements. Devil and his demons are pledging the allegiance. People united will never be defeated. Evilish tyrants forever will be scheming. We wasting time with the petty disagreements. Devil and his demons are pledging the allegiance.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
And again, ending with the words of Ronald Reagan, and how true is that today when we look at the so-called liberalism? These are the people that are against free speech, that are trying to censor everything that's on the internet and everything you think and cancel people. That's all coming from the left. And that is the definition of fascism. Fascism where the government has total control over the people, not the freedom that we've grown up on in the United States. They want to extinguish the freedom and turn everyone into subjects, not citizens. I really got to hand it to Flawdzilla right here. He's come out with a great song, with a great video, and at the absolutely perfect time. And I hope this gets a huge following and people take to heart the lesson he's telling, is that there's no benefit in Marxism unless you're in the elite, that's going to control things. But for the average person, there's no benefit at all. It's all negative. Good job, Flawdzilla.